Spoken lately, I haven't thought about flying for a long time. I haven't dreamed of that moment when I was alone above the clouds for a long time. I've dreamed of waking up on a roof, surrounded in blue and green grass, for more years than I could dream of remembering. I haven't walked back into the past, or scratched on the doors of my origins, where it all came from, since I held up that cape for the last time.
Return to Kent Town 10th Year Anniversary Edition is a revised version of Andy's first poetry book. The book can be purchased from Amazon and it contains numerous additional material.
Spoken Label. Hi, it's Andy N from Spoken Label. Thank you today for streaming or downloading another episode of Spoken Label. Spoken Label was originally set up on beginning of 2016 and as of speaking has currently nearly 300 sessions. The full archive is available on Spoken Label bandcamp.com. Although it is available for free for stream and download if you wish, I am always grateful for any sort of kind of donation to enable me to keep the running costs of this podcast going. And enjoy. Take care. Bye bye. Spoken Label.
Hey guys, Andy N, Spoken Label. Back in the house, Sunday afternoon. East Sunday, yes. It's great today because I've got an old friend of me as well. And the lady in question is, she'll tell you in a moment herself. But she was one of my very first guests back in Spoken Label. And this is going to make her feel older than what she is now. But I reckon it was 2017. I've got the fantastic Isabelle Kenyon with me today. Obviously, most parts best known for her Fly on the Wall press. Does that sound about right to you, Isabelle, that does it? When I first had you on.
I think so. I mean, I started sharing my poetry online in 2017. So you were probably one of the first people that I talked to, certainly first, podcast hosts that I chatted to. So I think we sort of intersected there as well. But also in 2017, I was still down south and then I moved back up to Manchester in 2018. So it might be that I don't know if we talked on the podcast before we met in person,
I've actually forgotten to answer. It's just, pardon me, it's just sign of getting old in my case, right? You're not old. These people need to know that now. You're only about 9 when we first got talking, weren't you, really? So
9?
No, but
funny.
You know what I mean. But yeah, it was
I was out of university, just out of uni when in 2017. And now almost, well, I'm not going to age myself. I'm 27. Yeah, I'm a couple of months off, so still going.
Yeah, you think really? Do you look back at yourself? Because I'm going to give you people a bit of background yourself in a second. You look back at yourself, you think all those years ago. Like I've gone for a lot since I started Spoken Label in 16. And your case, like you said, is you think yourself you move on all the time, don't you? You're being creative to various projects all the time.
You change all the time as well, don't you? Your focus, what you want to do. I guess you become a bit more confident in certain genres of art, or there's a lot of admin and organization as well when you're trying to do artistic projects, and I think you become more confident and established in that part as well.
Yeah, that's what's happened to Spoken Label really myself, because I've got more confident with this over time.
Yeah,
certainly got more organized of it. So probably not gonna know what I'm doing now. You're like it's for Fly on the Wall, aren't you? Because Fly on the Wall press. And I think we should tell people a little bit about that, where this press came from, first of all, before we move any further.
I mean, it's definitely come a long way, like you were saying. I mean, we started it in 2018. And indeed, obviously, I think that was probably the first time we talked to Andy, because we had the poetry anthology, which is now, I think you can get it on ebook, but the print version is out of stock. But it's called Please Hear What I'm Not Saying. And we did this charity anthology for Minds. And they had an amazing output of input, even of submissions coming into us. And we chose 116 from those 600. And we published it for Mind in the UK, the mental health charity. And from there, we continued to do another anthology that year, another charity anthology. And And then as we went through the years, 2019, we started publishing individual poets. In 2020, we started publishing individual short story collections. And then when we got to 2021, we did the year with the short story. And then 2022 onwards, we went into novels. And from there, we sort of not looked back. And so we more have like a fiction focus now than poetry. So there's been quite a shift, but we've kept that kind of social conscience. I always want Fly on the Wall to be accessible and ethical in communications, and the sustainability of our books and the way that we operate is really important to me as well. But yeah, we still have the same sort of principles, but we've definitely started more grassroots. And now I'd say, we're much more established. I was telling Andy before the podcast started recording that we are the winner of Small Press of the Year in the North this year at the British Book Awards, which is amazing. And just goes to show like you can do a lot. Like we're a one-woman publisher based in Manchester. And, with a lot of elbow grease and not that much money, we're basically entirely sustained through book sales, which is really rare in the small press world. We're able to do a lot, and the quality of our books is being recognised, which is fantastic.
No, indeed. Like it would, people will hear the more that this podcast will be out, I reckon, probably just after the award. So we'll definitely wish you good luck with that straight away. But no, it's a phenomenal achievement to actually get what you've done there. Like I said, I would have been absolutely emotionally exhausted if I'd won anything like that. You've been nominated there. You must have been at the end of it thinking, my God, I don't believe it.
It felt like quite a lot because every year, this is the only award that I think is kind of fair in the book industry at the moment, in that you get to define quality for yourself. So the form, you get to have 1.5k words to tell them about your year under certain headings, like any debut success, any marketing campaigns that highlighted like niche genres, and things like that show innovation, perhaps growth and commercial success.
Yeah,
and you get to define that yourself. And I feel like that is very fair. And it's meant that we were a finalist every year for 4 years. And then this year, our 5th year being a finalist, we won in the North. And I think it felt a little bit like, every day in the morning I'd have a shower or something, and then I'd think to myself, we're the winner in the North. And, I'd start my day off really well, because, if you got a bit of self-doubt, then or you're just exhausted, which I think a lot of small business owners are in the last few years, we're kind of been crippled. This kind of award, yes, you don't get any money. Where's money in the book industry? But what you do get is this kind of self-belief and someone validating you.
Yeah, no, I agree with you straight away. And I think that is, if you obviously without going too much to the book industry, because I know a bit about it, like you said, it's like, you're right, there's not a lot of money in the independent press, certainly, but to actually win the awards, it gives you the encouragement to keep going. I think a lot of the time, definitely with that. So great stuff. Now, ironically, we're not here to directly talk about that today, Isabelle. So that's just, I knew straight away we had to cover that as a side point. We're here today to talk about your debut novel, which has just come out, and The Dark Within Them. Now, people may know you, obviously, previous to this, you've done 5 poetry chapbooks.
Yeah.
Obviously, up to this stage. I'm going to ask you about that. Is any future in that next, anyway, later on. But what's made you, first of all, want to now move on to doing novels, first of all?
Yeah, I mean, I'd always been interested in the fiction world. I think I found poetry a little bit easier, and that, it's much easier to finish a poem than it is a novel. Although I'm sure some poets would disagree, but obviously it's a lot shorter. And it felt like for me anyway, that novel writing would be something that I would work up to, when my craft felt ready, or when I was ready to approach an agent and things like that. And I was working on this one for about 3 years, I'd say. And I get most of my ideas from reading newspapers. And I found out about this doomsday couple who now have, I think, a factual Netflix documentary, so you can find out about the real people and the horrific nature of their crimes. But I was really interested in their sort of psychopathic qualities, but also the extremes to which their faith had shaped their perceptions of reality. So my novel was not, it started from them, but it's not them. So the stories are not the same. But
No.
I was intrigued with the real couple. They felt their children were zombies, and they set out to eradicate them from the world. And but with it being set in America, the real people, there were a lot of guns involved. There was some strange family dynamics that everyone was getting involved. A lot of people were getting killed. And it was this massive court case, which was really interesting for me to watch because in the States, they stream the trials, whereas I wouldn't have access to that in the UK. So that was really interesting for me to see as well. And that's where the dark within them came from, this sort of idea of a couple who sort of spur each other on through these horrific sort of circumstances. And I wanted to explore that with the backdrop of the Mormon church, because I think that a sort of unwavering sense of faith can make people justify actions that otherwise you wouldn't be able to justify them at all. But if you have unwavering sense of faith and what you should be doing, even if that is completely misguided, then they feel like they have enough justification to act in immoral ways.
Yeah, it's interesting. You've done an interesting tactic here, Isabelle, because we were telling you before, like obviously my first novel came out last year. I'm not sure whether I went for the easy idea of writing what you know, because I wrote a novel set, well, not total fiction, in an area I grew up in and placed characters into that area.
Yeah.
Your case is you've gone from a complete polar opposite 180-degree angle with it.
Yeah.
Like it. Had you actually have you been to this area where your novel's set? Or was it?
So some areas are fictionalized, but I did go, and that was interesting in itself because I'd started the novel, not having been, and then March last year I went and I stayed with my friend's parents, and that was quite a rich area, and then we went into some of the areas where the novel was set, but obviously we're doing the sort of touristy parts anyway. And there were definitely details I was like, okay, this is not quite how I imagined it, and I had to change certain details. Like I'd stupid things like I'd put in that there would be forests in the desert, or that there would be trees to hide behind when it was really sparse. There wasn't anything like that. And there weren't really secluded roads and things like that, so I did have to adjust certain details of like chase scenes, or there's like a foreshadowing at the start where a deer gets killed, and like elements of where to put the deer and where they would hide the children so they didn't have to see the deer, things like that. I had to completely change. But yeah, I was always, I guess the thing about the Mormon church is I wanted to write about it, and it's not really well established in the UK. They're opening a temple in Birmingham and Sutton Coldfield soon, but apart from that, there's not really a presence in the UK. And I think the crimes that are committed in the book, it couldn't really be done in the UK because of the way that our houses are built. So yeah, I was talking to a film producer recently, and they were saying, "Oh, would you be open to be setting outside of America?" And I was thinking it probably couldn't be done unless it was somewhere remote like Scotland, but then you would lose so much of this sort of blind faith, because I think in the UK we don't have as many conspiracy theories as in the US.
Correct, yeah, I agree. There was a BBC Sound documentary last year on this, actually. There was, yikes, where was it now? Birmingham, London, one of those cities anyway. So that's why I first really heard all about this. But your novel was incredible. It really, really, it was shocking in what I mean, in a book way. That's why. But yeah, now it was like a great book. It really was. And did you find yourself when you were writing this book unconsciously slipping back into poet mode occasionally?
I think there was an element of that, and it was interesting because I was talking to my editors, and they were saying, Well, I said to them that I would like it to be commercial, and I'd started the novel by doing it unchronologically, which is not impossible, but reasonably difficult to do in a thriller novel if you're wanting to hit certain beats of like reveal and conceal. And so they said to me, well, if you want it to be more commercial and less literary, then, think about why you've done it unchronological and is there a really solid reason why you need it to be? And that's when we moved it back to chronological because I was saying, well, I guess there's not a massive reason for it to be unchronological.
Oh,
And then we were looking at, whether it could be made more commercial. And that was where we started making Amber slightly more likable because she did start as a complete psychopath on the same sort of level of sociopathy as her husband Chad is. And, I was told that in the commercial novel world, you can't really have two characters that are completely unlikable, or at least you have to invest in their actions. And Amber, as a mother, has some sort of redeemable traits in that because you can say, okay, well, I thought she was a good mother, or at least she loved her children, that sort of narrative. So we did a lot of work to make her more likable, or at least slightly more vulnerable to the reader. But it was a really interesting journey, and I think my tone is more literary than perhaps a commercial thriller is. Um, but I think that's an asset as well. I mean, people always say, like, when they read my fiction, oh, I can tell that you're a poet. And it's funny to me because while I've been writing fiction, I've not really been picking up the pen for poetry at all. But these sort of, if you work across more than one genre, then I think it probably does filter through.
yeah, yeah. I think it does. It's automatically because when I was doing my I did my novel last year. I've, like you, I've not really wrote much poetry at all until the past couple of weeks, really, for like 2 years now. And
Yeah.
it's like it's, I think when you're doing a lot of hats on your head and you're a master at this more than I am with running fly in the wall press and also your office services. It's like, I think your brain can only take so much, can't it, sometimes?
Yeah, you've got to go into one mode. Like I'm doing a developmental edit for a novelist at the moment from my services. And that's definitely one mode. If you're going to do a developmental edit and really look at the structure of a novel, that's really got to be one day almost. You can't, or at least one afternoon, where you just dedicate to a section of that novel. You can't really say, oh, I'm going to do bits and bobs of tasks, otherwise you're not fully immersed. But I think things like, oh, at the start of each day, I'll do a tiny bit of writing on my novel, on the second novel. Literally like 150 words will be fine with me. And then I sort of get on with my day. So I tend to find that if you do allocate like a small task, then I can flip between one task to another. Um, Things like, postage tasks or something. But yeah, generally I try to like focus in rather than multitask because I tend to find otherwise that I feel like I've not completed anything. And then
Yeah.
that makes you feel like, oh, I've not achieved anything today.
Yeah, no, I can well relate to that. Sometimes I think you can overdo it, definitely with it. So now on this novel, then, what made you want to set a good chunk of the book in a certain time period, 2004 to 2005 territory? There obviously was a conscious decision to do this, but can you elaborate why?
I haven't really thought about it that much. I think I wanted it to be sort of a certain time. I think that, you know, I didn't want it to be completely modern, because I think every generation as we go on, we perhaps become more reflective, or we look at sort of the conspiracy theories or the way that we're operating psychologically and we question more. And I certainly
Hmm.
wanted there to be less less room for reflection. I mean, you have this sort of system within the Mormon church which is quite patriarchal anyway, which is helpful. Because Amber feels like when she's this traveling faith healer, she feels that she can talk to ghosts, and that's her way of making money after her late husband dies. Um, but she's sort of seen as a little bit of a witch for that. People don't
Hmm.
really trust her. They'll look after her because she's a single mum, and that is sort of frowned upon in itself. she gets a little bit of status by the fact that she's a widow and not divorced, which would be complete ostracization. But she's only really given that status when she remarries Chad and she thinks that she can be accepted by the community again. And I think every year religion maybe slightly gets a little bit more modernized. And I guess that was something I was trying to avoid.
Yeah, I think you succeeded a bit straight away with it as well. So excellent stuff. Okay, what I'm always interested in learning about as well is whenever people bring out novels or a book like this, where did the inspiration for the title come from?
Oh yeah, I think originally it was called Dark Energy as my sort of working title. And I think it came from that particular title that we didn't go with. I sort of wanted it to be this sort of almost like a sort of religious energy that you say, you can feel like God around you. But it's not God's presence. It's, something more deadly. But it was sort of described that would be more science fiction, which, I agreed with. So
Yeah.
I wanted to go with something that went with, how they felt the children were. So they feel that Jilly, when she starts sending indecent images to a boy, she's 15, and they feel that she's been like possessed by the devil, and the community put her forward for this conversion therapy. Which is the unendorsed therapy, which is not part of the Mormon church, but it's something that the church leader there, Brett, performs. And so that's sort of looking at that they feel like there's a darkness in Jilly and in her brother Ivan. But also the reality is that the darkness is really within Amber and Chad and the sort of lengths that they'll go to for love, but also to cover their tracks and gain status in the Mormon church.
Yeah, I think you made the right move there, certainly with the change of title, because I think you're right with it. If you left it Dark Energies, it probably would have been heading towards more sci-fi territory. Yeah.
Bit ambiguous, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's more ambiguous. It does give it that sort of ambiguous, perhaps towards, I don't know, psychological horror, which I think this book probably does cover, actually.
Yeah.
That's for sure with it. Yeah. Now, one thing I'm interested to learn about this as well is, and it's a brave move as well, I think, whenever you write books. I've seen Amanda pull this off really well before now as well. When you ever do books that have got multi-viewpoints in.
Oh, yeah.
In the case of this book, was this always going to be the case?
It actually had more
Wow.
points of view. Originally, Melanie, who is Chad's like best mate, she's much older than him, but she's always sort of lived next door in the community and she's sort of seen him grow up. She's quite like a maternal figure for him. She did have points of view as well. There was a point at which the novel did have sort of trial scenes with the jury. And Melanie has a podcast which she was streaming the trial and sort of offering her feedback on it, and it gives her like a purpose because she's actually quite a lonely character, especially when Amber moves in with Chad and she's sort of not needed anymore as a confidant. So she played a bigger part, and she was sort of discovering things about the couple and what was going on behind closed doors, and so she played a point of view. But then I stuck to Chad and Amber, to the married couple, for the points of view. And I wanted to sort of play on the fact that, they both have ulterior motives. And at times, at the beginning, Chad doesn't have anything that he's like trying to cover up. He's a pretty simple soul. But then as it goes on, it was really useful to use the flipping point of view, because sometimes if we're in Amber's head, we don't quite know how Chad's dealing with loss, or what he might be sort of plotting next. And the same with Amber, we don't know, whether she's capable of fighting for her own survival and her kids if we're in Chad's point of view. So I thought that was quite helpful for me.
Yeah, there's both characters. It's a hard one, this, because like you said, I've seen reviews already, so people found them really two very almost unlikable characters in some ways.
Yeah.
But what you did, I think, was really clever with this was you made people want to carry on reading with it, whether it is out of fear. Perhaps you're thinking, would, for example, would Amber have to go forward and kill Chad? There's a good chunk of the book I didn't know whether she would. Did you know that yourself when you were writing this book?
Yeah, I felt like she would never kill Chad. There was a moment, which I won't sort of give away, but in the last scene, when it sort of revealed why Chad does what he does, there was a moment where I thought Amber could, have the potential to kill someone. And I think there's a potential in all of them in the novel to do that. But I wanted to explore like whether she would act on that, and I felt that ultimately, it has to take a lot, especially because ultimately, like at the very start of her journey, she was like the scared girl who was married off to her family sort of recommendation, and she was sort of left to be a young mother, and ultimately like she's just someone lost in the world who really wants to hold on to faith if she can. And it becomes harder and harder for her to accept that the things that happen to her are, God-given. But ultimately, like her only real happiness is this sort of belief in God. And that's what gives her purpose. So yeah, I didn't want to make her a horrible, horrible person.
Yeah, no, great. I agree with you on that one thing. I see you're on fine lines, but you played it really well, I think, straight away with it. So
I didn't want to make her like a victim woman as well. I think you see that a lot, that you have like a physically strong male who's capable of extreme violence, and then the woman character in the novels kind of shrink in order to play out that dynamic. And I find that dynamic quite boring. And I wanted Amber to be, intelligent and self-sufficient. And, in Chad, she sees safety and ability to not have to be so alpha all the time. But at the same time, she is someone like fearsome and strong. And I didn't really want her to lose that.
no, you didn't. You succeeded really well with that, Isabelle, as well. Straight away with it, I think. I was quite interested in the development of Chad and his character, because I really liked his relationship with Gillian Ivan, who I thought was critical on this book actually as well.
Yeah.
Obviously, like, you've told us about the development of Amber as a character. Did you know where Chad was going to be straight from the beginning, or did his character change as you were writing it?
Yeah, I think Chad like was a difficult one to get in the head of sometimes, when you're sort of mapping out a character. Because for Amber, I felt like her thoughts I could access quite well. But for Chad, he ultimately is like a simple soul who likes his fishing. He likes going to the gun range. He likes to go see his uncle on the farm, hang out with Melanie. Ultimately, he likes a quiet life, and he sees excitement in Amber, and he's kind of happy to change his life at that point because he's never been married, and he sort of thinks maybe he's missing out. He's sort of getting to almost midlife crisis stage, and he's thinking now's the time, because Amber's not from his town, and he knows everyone in the town, and there's no way that he would get married to any of them. He sort of missed the boat. He didn't feel strongly enough about anything at that time, whereas Amber like inspires something more primal or excitement in him. And he's never sort of seen himself as a dad, I think. So Chad, his mum and his dad died when he was quite young, so his uncle Jim brought him up, who's this sort of gruesome figure, he's sort of farmer who teaches him how to kill the weaker animals, and how to be a man in a very negative perception of what a man is. So Chad's not been taught how to communicate his emotions, and that's why when he feels frustration or guilt or anything really, it would turn to something physical for him, because that's the only way he knows how to express himself. And he's never sort of been shown that kindness, apart from Melanie, who sort of recognizes that in him and tries to show him that kindness. But yeah, so he tries to be a dad to the teenagers, Gillian Ivan. He's so bowled over by Amber when he meets her that, once he realizes that she has these teenage kids, he thinks maybe it'll be all right, or at least it's a compromise that he wants to go through because he really loves Amber, or at least he thinks he does. But at that point, it's really just an infatuation, but they do get married very early on because of their their morals and their faith. And also the fact that, you can't live with someone unless you're married to them within the church.
Yeah, I've heard that before. Mormons, interesting stuff. Now, obviously, I'm going to ask you a really awkward question now because I know I can get away with this with you. But you always say when you're writing books like novels, there's got to be some element of you in the main character. Do you, looking back at Amber, do you see any similarities between yourself and Amber?
Do you know, it's funny. I think that I tend to write unlikable characters in some ways, in that, I tend to like including an internal monologue, which is not entirely positive, because personally, I don't think my internal monologue is very positive most of the time. That doesn't mean that I'm not a good, kind person, but it just means, that when I look at the world, I might, be frustrated about something, or I'm not very patient, or, whatever it is. So I think there's elements of that in my presentation of Amber. And I think it's funny because I think everyone's internal monologue is like that, as far as I know.
Yeah, yes.
But we just don't usually put it into the character.
Yeah.
I put it into Amber. Although, she's a strange one. I think that she maybe, if she hadn't been forced to have kids, would she have had them? Possibly not. She's not the most natural mother. She definitely would do anything for them, but whether she has a close sort of physical and emotional bond, we don't know. She does try and get close to her children. She does understand them. But whether, she would have had them if there wasn't that societal and religious expectation on her, perhaps, or at least she would have waited a bit longer before she knew who she was. And I think, so yeah, I think there isn't much of me in Amber, because she is someone who's been shaped by her community. I'm not from the Mormon church, but I have sort of, you observe people that are sort of trapped within societal expectations. I think there's an element of that. But yeah, hopefully there's not that much of me in there. As a psychological thriller, She's definitely a narcissist, and I feel like I've not really got that quality at all.
No, it wouldn't have been Isabelle I knew if you turned and said to me, "You are a narcissist." I want no chance.
I think if you say you're a narcissist, you're not, are you?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I agree with you completely in that. Without giving spoilers away, because I'm trying to be conscious of this with you today, there was a quite a substantial jump in time on the last bit of the book. Obviously, without giving spoilers away, what made you want to do that?
So this is after the sort of crimes have been committed, isn't it?
Yeah, I think we'll just be careful how we phrase it, right?
Yeah, I know what you mean. So this was sort of the bit where we changed the end of the novel quite a lot, me and my editor. So we had sort of 3 ways that we could do it, and structurally, and I chose to cut 25k and add it back in, and we went with a chase scene whereby Amber has to confront the Mormon church in a way, without giving too much away. She has to sort of break down what she believes, and at this point she's choosing between her marriage with Chad and the stability and romantic love that she thought she'd found, and what's best for perhaps justice and morality. And this is the point where she has to choose between the two, and sort of perhaps reject what she's been brought up within. So it jumps forward a little bit, and there I sort of present the trial scenes instead through a newspaper article, which I definitely wanted that in, because the trial scenes were such a big chunk, and I did really like writing them, but it just became a sort of legal thriller at that point. And there was this whole thing which was really interesting as well, because the real couple, the Doomsday couple, when they stood trial, the woman, who was called Laurie, she was judged to be incompetent to stand trial. There's a term for it, it's gone from my head. But yeah, she wasn't seen as fit to stand trial. But in this particular state that Laurie was in, you can't be judged as insane. So you're only judged as unable to stand trial for a certain amount of months, and you get therapy, and then they say, right, she can go back on stand. And so I was writing this, and I had already written that my character when with a completely different state, but I also had her be unable to stand trial and explain what had happened because she's mentally unwell. And so when I saw this in real life, I was like, what? I've already written that. And because my novel is completely different to the real people, I thought, God, now it's mirroring real life. So it became really complicated.
Oh God, yeah. It just shows you, Isabel, sometimes when you're a good writer working out people, taking it your own way, reality has a bit of biting you on the bum sometimes, and doing what you're not expecting. Oh yeah, I completely agree with that.
I thought I've completely changed everything around, and now it's coming back to meet me, and I'm gonna have to get rid of it now.
Oh, typical, absolute typical. My sort of look that will be as well straight away. Do you see yourself starting to look at wrapping up now? Anyway, do you think you'll ever write a second novel?
Yeah, so I'm actually doing quite well with one. So I had Laser Eyes surgery last week, which is slowing me down, but so I haven't done it today. But it's my only day that I haven't done it so far. But I've been doing like 150 words every morning on it, and it's a romance novel. And I thought, talking about earlier, when we were saying write what you know, I decided to write one set in Manchester, about two characters who are like 25 and 26, and not too many years away from me. And so it originally started as a rom-com. Now I'd say it's more just a rom. But yeah, I'm about like 55k through it. It's going quite well. I'm doing it quite, I guess, methodically. I've learned a lot of things about structure through doing the thriller. And now I'd say, yeah, I'm quite happy with it. It's got a bit of a cheesy title so far. I'm probably going to change at some point. But it's about an artist who meets someone who, again, is from a different culture to her. So I'm still exploring sort of cultural dynamics.
Brilliant. Good luck with straight away with it. Is there anything? Obviously, there always is stuff happening with Fly on the Wall Press anyway. So, could you reveal what's coming up with Fly on the Wall Press?
Yeah, for sure. So we've just had the Dart of In them out, and we're doing a book every sort of 2 months, really. We've got quite a lot of books out in sort of September to December, but at the moment it's every 2 months. So in May, we have the 2023 maker of the Federation of Scotland, which is Morag Anderson, and she's got her second chapbook out with us. So we run this prize called the Aria Marty Prize, and she's our pamphlet winner this year. It's called "And I Will Make of You a Vowel Sound." She's very good at her titles.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, clever Ironman straight away. Yeah,
yeah. It's gorgeous. It looks at council estates in Scotland when she's growing up, people that she's observed. It's very like female experience focused. It looks at girls to women, what joins them. It's very much about resilience and poverty, and class as well. It's a really beautiful look, and she has a unique voice.
Brilliant. No, definitely good luck with that. So it sounds an excellent book. So, okay. In relation to yourself, then, I know you've just had a big reading over at Blackwall Books, didn't you, the other week? You were telling me about that before.
That was so lovely.
Is there any other readings coming up you could talk about?
There are actually. So I think by the time this has gone up, maybe people, will have passed. But I've got on the 6th of April, we're at Votes. I think it's Votes, maybe Voce, books in Digbeth in Birmingham. And that's with Charlie Barnes. So she's launching her novel with me as well, which will be brilliant. It's called A True Crime. And then I'll be in Ilkley, which is the Grove Bookshop just outside of Leeds, on the 12th of April. It's a Friday. With Elliot J. Harper, who has a science fiction / fantasy kind of intersection of novel out with Fly on the Wall called New Gillian Street. So we'll both be performing at that one. Then I might do something later on in sort of penciled for Newcastle and also New Mills.
Oh, you've got to do New Mills, haven't you? People are wondering.
Yeah. I need to contact them. They've told me I should.
Yeah. Well, we're not going to give you any hints away where your family are from, but New Mills, yeah, I think I'd be surprised if you don't go up there anyway.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay. To wrap up with the last question, Isabel, and it's been a pleasure today as well, of course. Where can people find out more about you, and where do you recommend they get your book from?
So Fly on the Wall Press website is www.flyonthewallpress.co.uk. That is where would be the best place to get the Dart of In them, because all profits from the novel go back into our book schedule. So I'm putting it back into our authors. And any other places as well. So Waterstones, it's pretty much in every Waterstones in the country, which is amazing. Amazon, I would say, is the last choice. However, you can do it. I won't blame you. And indie bookshops as well. They'll be able to order it in. So that would be amazing. And myself on Twitter, or X, if you still have that, is my handle is Kenyon_Isabelle. And then on Instagram, you can connect with me under Kenyon Author Services, which is because I have so many social medias that I decided to have that one as a sort of worky title rather than my name.
Oh no, I know it's myself having lots of different projects on the go. It's trying to keep up yourself sometimes, and you've got like multi accounts and various bits and pieces.
Stupid now. I think I've got about 9.
Yeah, join the club. I think myself, damn shit. You can't keep up.
Yeah,
you can't keep up.
I don't want anything new at this point. I'm like, don't create another social media world.
No, it's I could name, for example, and I don't know whether you use it. Like, I know a few people that are on threads now, and I've not even joined that. I'm keeping off it. It's too much.
I've joined it, but only because, you can sort of easy share things across the platforms. So you can just be like, here's me on another platform. But yeah, I don't think it's very well used right now.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me that. So, but anyway, we're not going to go into bad-mouthing social media. We could do, but we won't.
Another podcast.
We'll do that another day, definitely. So, but anyway, Isabelle, it's been a pleasure today.
It's been fun. Thanks, Andy.
Yeah, I'm just saying we've not spoke. Well, I've seen you obviously since post lockdown, at least a couple of times.
Maybe see you at the Northern Publishers Fair in April. I
keep meaning to get down to these fairs of yours as well. So,
but
this podcast to be out unfortunately after that. But I tell you what, tell us a bit about the Northern Publishers Fair to wrap up with anyway, because there's something we haven't talked about.
Yeah, it's my favourite event to run for Fly on the Wall Press. Our next one will be Saturday, 27th of April, and
day for my birthday. That.
Hey,
I'll have to come down then. Yeah.
Yeah. It's always at Manchester Central Library, and it's just brilliant. We have 16 publishers this year, and this year we're going to have a printing press as well from Incline Press, so that people can take away like a bookmark. I believe it's going to be like embedded with a design, which is quite cool. Or it might be like printed on the top. I don't actually know. I'm excited to see it. It might be a mixture of two. But so we have like 16 publishers from the north who are all doing different genres. I like to create it, and it's a great space to network, meet other fellow writers. And a lot of people go when they're interested in work in publishing as well. So we have a lot of universities and colleges that come along in their groups and ask questions, as well as buying books.
Sounds good to me. Unfortunately, this podcast will be out after that. But I know it's usually yearly, isn't it? Or do you do it more now?
Yeah, sometimes I do it twice a year, but you know what Manchester's like. Sometimes there's too much going on. So it might be that we repeat again this year, but it sort of depends on a festival schedule that's going on in Manchester.
Yeah.
But if not, it's every April/May.
Keep an eye on Isabelle's social media, everybody, in case she does a second one this year, because they are excellent. I know people that go to them every time. So I need to go. So anyway, we'll call it quits here, Isabelle, because we could be here for ages more yet. Thank you again.
Andy.
It's been too long. Okay, so keep us informed whenever your second novel's out, and I get the feeling it's going to be probably quicker in this one. I get me and Sinks are telling me as well. So pleasure. Okay, hang around. We'll have a quick word off mic. Well, thank you again.
Cheers, Andy.
Right, folks, that's it for us today. Thanks to Isabelle Kenyon, as always. It's been great today catching up with her. We will see you all next time. So, as Don Callis over at AEW Wrestling says, stay safe and stay over.
Spoken, mate.
21st of April, 2015. Amber. Restless. Amber didn't remember the last time she felt like this. Just relax, Chad had told her. My home is your home. But she was still shocked to turn over and see a man lying in the bed next to her. That man is your husband, she reminded herself. Morning, beautiful. And he thinks you're beautiful. She rolled over and propped her chin on his bare chest. I have to go to work in 5 minutes, he said. She took his nipple beneath her teeth. What are we doing this weekend? He rubbed sleep from the crusts of his eyes and reached for the window blind toggle, projecting chinks of light onto the bed linen. She estimated they had a few hours before the heat of the day seeped in too. I go fishing at the weekend. The Mesa Canal. His eyes widened. Last week, they caught a channel catfish and a grass carp. Saw it online. Whoopers they were. But with me, what will we do? He looked confused. You can come. She withheld an eye roll. Was it too much to ask? A bit of romance, a date planned, even now that they were married. I wasn't thinking of that. She saw him check the clock, and irritation tickled her throat. His leg twitched, and he kissed her head as if the conversation was over. I'll go see a friend then, she said quickly. Who? He swung his legs out of bed. Well, Amy, of course. Why don't you meet Melanie? He padded into the ensuite, and she heard water slap his face. She waited until the sink plug gurgled. Melanie is your friend. Are they not one and the same? No, we don't need to have the same friends. He came back in, bustling for an iron shirt in the cupboard. He looked confused, the cogs in his brain turning. Perhaps it was cruel to test him at 6 a.m. She sat back on her elbows, the pillow crunching around her skin. No, it was good to challenge him. He'd never done marriage before, and she wanted this one to be right for her. Equal. Well, don't you want me to meet Amy? She said it jokingly, tossing her hair over her shoulder. His voice sharpened. It's not the same. She sat up straighter. Why not? I like her. She's part of the church community. She's not ladylike. She didn't say anything. Perhaps that was true, but Amy's brash personality was the reason she had warmed to her. He slicked his hair back in the mirror, yet to put on pants. The order made her smile. And then there's the rumour, he added. What rumour? That the kid came out of wedlock. Amber bit her tongue. She knew this was an unshakable belief for Chad. Purity. Public decency. Amber could see how a child could be consumed with love in any state of relationship. She would never voice it. She had never felt lust was a shameful feeling. What it led to didn't create shame. Not in her eyes. Well, she's married now, she offered evenly, stretching out her toes so that they created ghostly imprints against the surface of the sheets. Then he lassoed her left foot, hand clamped. Amy is not the right friend for you. They locked eyes. His voice wasn't raised. Her muscles didn't clench. And yet her heart thumped in her ears. Would it embarrass you? Yes. An instant answer. She nodded slowly. She hadn't realized Chad cared so much about what others thought. A wail broke their eye contact. Chad bolted, rearing up on his heels. What is that? Ivan, he gets night terrors. The moan was low and plaintive, infiltrating the thin membrane of the wall. Is that normal for him? Chad was spooked, unsure of his feet. He seemed to be heading towards the door. I'll see to him, she said, swinging her legs to the side of the bed, standing in front of Chad to block his exit. It's not an unusual thing for him. Good. It's a new place. He gets anxious. Got nothing to be anxious about. She sighed audibly and placed a hand on her hip. He's different, she offered. He's different to you, she meant. Well, I hope you can sort it. I can't listen to that every night. She bristled and opened the door with some force. Chad must have realised how he had come across, because he added, I'm cranky, Amb. I hope he settles in soon. Honest, I do. She smiled back at him. You know, I'm pretty sure he doesn't like me. Amber half frowned, half twitched the corners of her lips into a laugh. He doesn't know you. You're overthinking it. Chad shrugged, crossing his arms over like a toddler pre-tantrum. He'll have to sort his own ego out, she thought, heading towards Ivan's room. Your lunch is in the refrigerator. Don't forget it.
Spoken, mate.